The laugh was the worst part. Not loud, not wild, just a short, arrogant little burst that slipped out of the defendant's mouth and hung in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom like an insult. Tuesday morning, Providence Municipal Court. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, wet footprints across the tile from the rain outside, a line of people waiting for their names to be called. And at the center of it, a 28-year-old driver in a gray quarter zip leaning back like the whole thing was beneath him, grinning over a $40 citation. "Your Honor," he said, still half smiling, "we're really doing all this over $40?" That was the moment the room changed. Caprio had been looking down at the file. Now he looked up over his glasses, slow and flat, the way judges do when they've just decided someone is about to learn the difference between inconvenience and consequence. The clerk stopped typing. Even the next defendant in line turned around. Because everyone in that room understood something the driver didn't. This was never about $40. It looked small. A minor city ticket, one parking violation, one man acting like the system had dragged him in over pocket change. But within seconds, it became clear that this wasn't a story about a fee. It was a story about entitlement, about a man who thought rules were for other people. And the deeper the court went into his file, the worse it got. What happened next didn't just embarrass him. It stripped away the entire act. The citation itself was dated January 12, 2026, issued at 8:17 in the morning on Broad Street outside a medical office building that handled dialysis and mobility transport. The offense code was simple: obstruction of a wheelchair curb ramp. City fine, $40. The kind of number people hear and immediately assume the case is trivial. That assumption lasted right up until the clerk read the officer's note into the record. The silver BMW had been left angled across the painted access zone and directly over the ramp, blocking the only sidewalk descent at that entrance. Rain was coming down. Medical transport had arrived. An elderly woman with a walker had to be helped into the street because the curb access was blocked. Traffic was active. The officer documented it, photographed it, and issued the ticket. And still the driver smiled. He said everyone parked there for 2 minutes. He said the city just wanted money. He said this was a joke. Then he made the mistake that turned a routine hearing into a public unraveling. He laughed again. If you appreciate stories where power finally meets consequences, stay with me, because this is where the mask started to slip. Judge Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He asked one question. "Is this your only matter with this court?" The driver hesitated. Too long. "No, sir, I mean maybe one other." The clerk pulled the registry hold report. There were not 1 or 2 issues attached to that plate. There were 9. 9 separate municipal citations across 11 months. Providence, Cranston, and Warwick. Parking in fire lanes. Expired meter tickets never answered. 1 tow warning. 2 notices sent to an address that no longer matched the registration record. Total outstanding balance before that morning, $640, add late penalties, administrative holds, and compliance fees, and the running number was already well above the laughable little 40 he thought he was there to mock. And that should have been enough. Most people would have gone quiet right there. He didn't. He shrugged and said the notices probably got lost. He said he was busy working. He said if the city wanted the money so badly, they should have called instead of mailing nonsense. It was careless, rehearsed arrogance. The kind that works in parking lots and group chats and maybe with people who don't want confrontation. It does not work under oath. Then Caprio asked the clerk to place the citation photos on the screen. The first image showed the BMW nose first over the blue-striped access zone. The second showed the rear tire sitting almost flush with the curb ramp. The third was wider, wet pavement, gray sky. A transport van stopped at an awkward angle, and at the edge of the frame exactly what the driver had been trying to minimize out of existence. A clinic worker holding an umbrella over an older woman while guiding her walker off the curb and into the road. That was when the story stopped being ordinary, because now this wasn't just a parking ticket, it was documented indifference, an actual human cost, caught in still images, created for the convenience of a man who walked into court acting like dignity itself was negotiable if the price tag looked small enough. The smile disappeared, but the damage was done. Caprio leaned forward and asked him if he understood why wheelchair access zones existed. The driver tried to pivot, said he didn't see anyone at the time, said he was dropping something off, said it was raining. He was reaching for excuses faster than facts. The problem was proof. The officer's time-stamped photos showed the car there for 11 minutes. The clinic's incident note attached to the citation packet stated staff had to assist a patient into the street because the access ramp was unusable, and then the clerk found the detail that changed everything. On the date of the violation, the vehicle's registration was under a pending suspension flag tied to lapsed insurance verification. Now the room got even quieter, because a driver laughing over a $40 ticket is one thing. A driver who had already ignored multiple notices blocked disabled access and was operating a car under a compliance flag while pretending this was all bureaucratic theater, that becomes a pattern. And patterns are what courts recognize faster than performances. At that point, Caprio gave him an opening, a narrow one. "Is there anything truthful you want to tell the court before I rule?" It was the cleanest exit he was ever going to get. He could have owned it, could have said he was careless, could have apologized, could have acknowledged the person on that sidewalk. Instead, he doubled down and muttered, "This is crazy over $40. Wrong sentence, wrong courtroom, fatal timing. If you believe no one is above accountability, this was the line that mattered." Caprio straightened the file, looked directly at him, and delivered the kind of response that ends the performance instantly. "No, sir, this is not over $40. This is over conduct. It is over disregard. And it is over your decision to treat this court, that officer, and the public you endangered as if none of them deserve respect." He denied any reduction. Then he did something even more effective than anger. He got precise. The court would require full payment of the outstanding municipal balance. The boot hold on the vehicle would remain. No courtesy adjustment. No dismissals for inconvenience. The registration compliance issue would stay referred until resolved with the proper agency. And the defendant was instructed to settle the matter in full before the end of business or leave the vehicle immobilized. Just like that, the math changed. Not $40. More than $800 due once everything active on the file was counted and enforced. One laugh had turned into an afternoon of damage control, a booted BMW, an insurance problem that wasn't going away, and a courtroom full of strangers watching a man realize too late that swagger does not convert into leverage when the record is already printed. By then, his voice had gone thin. The confidence was gone. He started talking faster, softer, trying to explain that he needed the car for work, that he hadn't known, that he didn't mean any harm. But that is the brutal thing about these moments. The explanation always arrives after the evidence. And for everyone else in that room, especially the people waiting their turn with envelopes, pay stubs, and quiet embarrassment, the message was unmistakable. The court had not punished poverty, it had punished contempt. There's a difference, and Caprio made it visible in under 5 minutes. When the hearing ended, the defendant stepped back from the podium without another joke, no grin, no laugh. Just a quick glance toward the rain-streaked courthouse window, where somewhere outside his car was still sitting under enforcement because he had mistaken a small fine for a small offense. That is why moments like this travel so far. Not because a judge was harsh, not because a driver got embarrassed, but because every so often someone walks into a courtroom believing the system exists to absorb their arrogance without response. And every so often, the record is ready, the facts are clear, and the performance collapses in public. If cases like this make you think, let me know in the comments. Because the haunting part is not that he laughed at $40. It's that he laughed at the person on the sidewalk, at the officer who documented it, at the court asked to clean it up. The money was just the smallest number attached to the biggest truth. In the end, Judge Caprio didn't destroy him with volume. He did it with proportion. He took a man who thought the case was tiny and showed him its full size. That is what real authority looks like. Calm, specific, unimpressed. And when the room emptied and the rain kept falling outside, the final image was simple. One man had come to court thinking this was about a ticket. He left understanding it was about character, and by then that lesson was a lot more expensive than $40.